Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Just before we start the formal presentation this morning, a couple of words from me, if I may. This last 6 months has seen, very sadly, the passing of our chairman, John Hughes. John was a hugely admired chairman. He'd been with Just Eat for 6 years, and is greatly missed in the business, and indeed, of course, in the wider community, and I wanted to mark that today. Having got to know John well over the course of the last year, I know that one thing he would be saying is, come on, get on with it. And to that end, we are getting on with it. We'll talk about results in a moment. But also, we're delighted to welcome today our new Chief Executive, Peter Plum. I'm going to ask Peter just to introduce himself. Peter.
Thank you, Paul. Well, welcome, everyone, and good morning. I just want to take the opportunity to introduce myself to you. I know some of you might know me through your colleagues from the 8 years I did as CEO of Money Supermarket, which I absolutely loved. And my plan was to take a little bit of time off in the summer. But the board of Just Eat contacted me about this role, and it took a very, very short period of time to say yes, because I do think this is a phenomenal business. And there are amazing parallels between this and Money Supermarket. Price comparison is a very, very, very competitive market. At Money Supermarket, we led the market using customer data and customer insights to really deliver a better service to customers in the competition. And I think that's really a theme that I want to bring to Just Eat as we go forwards, because there's a couple of things I was just going to share with you of when the board spoke to me about this business, why it didn't take very long to say yes. Firstly, I think, and I've seen a lot of digital platforms, Just Eat is the purest play digital platform I have ever seen. I think it's a phenomenal business, and I think David and the team should take huge praise for pioneering this business and taking it global so quickly. I think, secondly, it really is a global business. Food is fun. I spent 10 years of my career in the middle working for international and European businesses, for people like PepsiCo, Pepsi Foods, Disney Consumer Products, and Dyson. And I really think a global business that is focused on the customer will be a lot of fun, and we'll have a lot of fun with the brand, engaging customers in what is a pioneering service. In the deck says it's a 23 billion business opportunity. I don't know many other businesses and people that would stand here saying, I'm going to work for 23 billion opportunity. I think, thirdly, and most importantly, the team and the people I've met along the process have been so impressive. The results today, I think, are a real accolade to the team. I know you're going to cover them, Paul, so I won't steal the thunder. And finally, I do want to thank personally Paul. I think Paul has done a tremendous job. He is a role model CFO. Throughout the process, he has helped me so much understand the business. And working with Paul, I very, very much look forward to. He is a first-class CFO. I know together we'll have a lot of fun leading this business forward. But I do also want to mention Andrew Griffiths, who did step in to the interim chairman role. He has driven such a fantastic process and given me access to absolutely anything and everything I wanted along the way. And those two individuals I do just want to publicly thank, because that's one of the main reasons I've joined. So I am an observer today, so I'm sorry I won't take any questions. This is Adrian and Paul's show. I will be joining on the 18th of September. Please give me a bit of time to get my feet under the table. It's a big business. It's a massive growth, and there's a lot to get hold of. But I do really then look forward to engaging with you all, certainly at the prelims, as I start getting into the business and working with Paul and laying out the direction in which we're going to head. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you all. And Paul, I'll hand back to you for the results.
Thank you, Peter. We're greatly looking forward to you joining, and thanks for those words. I absolutely promise you that they won't give you very long to get your feet under the table. Okay, to the most exciting of slides, the disclaimer. You've seen it, it's in your pack and on the screen. The structure of today's presentation is similar to that we've previously done. I'm delighted to be joined by our Chief Operating Officer, Adrian Blair, known to many of you, who will share his perspectives on our first half performance in a few minutes. Perhaps just before we dive into the headline numbers, let's remind ourselves of what it is we're here to do, what we're building. Our vision is to create the world's greatest food community. We're pursuing this by creating a growing and dynamic marketplace connecting more than 75,000 restaurants with 19 million customers, both substantially up on the prior period. For our restaurant partners, who are mostly SMEs, we provide our leading digital platform with a well-supported global brand. For our customers, we offer the widest choice of restaurants, from popular local independents to the international brands. Today we're going to talk about the things we're going to do to deliver an even richer experience for those two communities. And we're driving this with a great team. And at a time of some change, I would also like to thank my colleagues, not only on the board, but on the executive team, and to the wider community within Just Eat, who have just done a great job and shown great commitment to this vision. So my thanks to them. We're really pleased to be reporting these numbers at this halfway stage. Orders up 24% to 80 million. Revenues up 44% headline to nearly £250 million now, well ahead of our expectations. Underlying EBITDA up 38% to 74 million. And of course, we're going to drill down on those numbers in a few minutes. Let's look at how this breaks down between the UK and our international portfolio. We see UK order growth of 18% in the first half. So if you remember, consistent with my mid to high teens order growth prognosis for 2017 that I conveyed back in March. And this is translated to stronger revenue and underlying EBITDA growth. With revenues of £107 million, our international business now accounts for 43% of the group. As recently as the full year 2015, this was only 31%, which talks, I think, a great deal to our growing and successful international business. Here, internationally, we grew orders by 35% and revenues by 75%. And I think it gives you a sense of the journey we're on when you see that group revenues for all of 2015 was 247.6 million, almost identical to what we're reporting, the numbers we're reporting for this first half in 17. Now, clearly, there's an important impact from Skip in these numbers, and we'll come to the financial soon. However, 6 months or so in, we're very pleased with this business. It's exceeding its acquisition case. And not only does it see us winning clearly in Canada, but it's bringing benefits, and will continue to the wider group. With respect to the proposed acquisition of Hungry House, as most of you know, we're working closely with the CMA. Nothing more I can add to that today, and we'll update you, though, of course, in due course, when news flows out of that process. Okay, if we're all about creating the world's greatest food community, let's quickly recap on how that translates to the priorities we set for 2017. They go to making our 75,400 restaurant partners' businesses even more successful. They go to improving the experience our customers enjoy when they engage with Just Eat, and to increasing the choice available to them, so growing their dining occasions. I'm going to look a little bit more closely at our execution against those priorities. Starting with the things that we'll be doing for our restaurants. First and foremost, we're growing the top line of our restaurant partners' businesses, adding 19% or over 3 million more active users, investing a formidable marketing budget to support our restaurant estate, and processing £1.5 billion worth of orders in this first half. More restaurants saw sponsored prominence on our platform, driving top placement revenues by 48% year over year on a constant currency basis. Now, that's all about their top line, but we also look to support their bottom line performance. And you remember, we talked about restaurant services back in March. This is where we're using our scale to negotiate exclusive discounted supply agreements on behalf of our restaurant partners. The sort of initiative you can pursue once you've established a really strong marketplace. So here's an update at what is still a relatively early stage. I think we're delivering clear value for our restaurants. In fact, nearly 2,000 of them, as you see in the UK, taking advantage of these deals. And we're saving them a lot of money. And indeed, it's equivalent to a 1% reduction in commission, effectively, on average. So much so that, in fact, for over 50 of them, they're now saving more money than they're paying us in commission. And we'll continue to innovate. I'm going to be particularly interested to see how this partnership goes with Make It Cheaper, because this offers the potential to save on utility bills and material cost again to any restaurant. Why are we doing this? It isn't for direct financial gain. We're not charging for these new services. However, if you consider that we're faced with competitors in the form of some of the best resourced global technology players, we're seeking to make our relationships with these restaurant partners ever more valuable to them. And finally, we continue to improve the technology we deploy into restaurants, adding new functionality to our order pad devices, which makes a huge difference to our restaurant partners. We now have over 15,000 of those devices in our restaurants and processed 59% of UK orders through this platform. Okay, let's move to customers and what we're doing there. Here, we're seeking to offer a broader cuisine and restaurant choice and to improve our customers' experience on our platform. So, building on the comments you heard back in March, we're progressing our early-stage relationships with selected dining chains. We've added more than 180 outlets to our platform in this first half. But just as a reminder, what are we trying to achieve here? Firstly, we want to give our customers no reason to think that they can't order what they want on our platform. So if that includes working with well-known branded dining chains, we should respond to that. Second, we want to drive more orders to independent restaurants. So we want both constituents to win under this strategy. Now, it's still too early to be definitive about whether those two hypotheses that I just mentioned are proven to be correct. There are some encouraging results. Adrian will touch on them. But fundamentally, we need more time and more learnings under our belt. So I appreciate you're going to want data and disclosure that goes to this, but it is, at this still early stage, too early in these pilots to provide this. That said, we'll see the activity in the second half and in due course provide you with a fuller update of our experience. Aside from the branded chains, we continue to work towards creating an increasingly flexible and personalised experience on our platform. And indeed, as you see here, we're testing a lunchtime proposition, consistent with our goal of growing dining occasions. I talked there about sort of platform improvements. They work for both restaurant partners and for customers. And they're happening at both an infrastructural level as well as at the front end, where we continue to work on subjects like important topics like platform reliability. So I keep my fingers crossed. I'm touching wood here, but I will say to you, we had a record-breaking 1.5 million order UK bank holiday weekend back in April, and we saw 100% uptime on our core platform through the month of June. So real credit to the progress I think our tech team has made. As we note on this slide, one of our new services for restaurants, and also one that improves the customer experience, has been the introduction of delivery polygons, enabling restaurants to create a bespoke delivery area, given factors, variables like traffic flows, etc. Think of this as a major refinement on that classic three-circle poster you often see when you walk into a delivery food outlet. Even more exciting, we look forward to a time when all of our businesses will share one global platform. We see these enhancements delivered once for the benefit of everyone, which will be, of course, a much more effective use of our engineering resource. My final comment in this section is about Skip the Dishes. We're really pleased with the performance of this business over its first 6 months in the group, achieving first half revenues in Canadian dollars of 28 million, against our expectations of 40 million for the full year. Now, as a reminder, Skip is still an early stage business and it's loss-making, with its outperformance resulting from a progressive rollout into new cities. So those losses, for the moment, expand with growth. And this is relevant to the comments I'll make on guidance a little bit later. But the reassurance here lies in the clear profitability Skip demonstrates in those cities where it is established. Clearly, the rationale is about creating clear market leadership in Canada, and Skip has brought that to us. It also brings expertise in food delivery, and we're going to use that where appropriate, effectively across our markets. Okay, this is possibly a slightly superfluous slide where I pass from myself to myself, but I'll use it to change our attention to the financials. As I said earlier, it's a strong start to the year. Revenues up 44%, or 38% on a constant currency basis, stripping out the FX tailwind. As I mentioned, this is ahead of expectations, and this momentum gives us an opportunity to invest further in the business. Now, this translated to 38% growth in underlying EBITDA, implying a modest reduction of margins from 31.1% in the prior year to 29.8% in the current. This reflects the inclusion of Skip for the reasons I just gave. Excluding Skip, group margins grew to 32.7%. And adjusted EPS grew by a strong 39%. Okay, if we take now the usual canter through the segments, I'll start with the UK. As you can see here, revenues were up 27%, comfortably ahead of order growth of 18%, which of course reflects the commission changes implemented back in April 16, and indeed the success of the top placement service. Our first half performance implies a sequential improvement in order growth in Q2 against Q1. And this is down to execution, driven by stronger marketing and, as I mentioned earlier, platform reliability. And this growth is achieved while maintaining the EBITDA margin at the 52% level. We'll continue the marketing investment into the UK in the second half of the year, including, of course, the recently announced partnership with X Factor. Okay, let's move to our second largest market, Australia and New Zealand. And by the way, for these international slides, we've moved to an FX neutral analysis of revenue growth. And I'll just remind you of the comments we made back in March. There's a lot to do here in 2017. If we're successful, we'll have migrated our two platforms, our two businesses each operating on their own distinct platform to the core Just Eat platform. We'll have consolidated our efforts around the Menulog brand, and we'll have diversified our order base to achieve broader national coverage. Okay, so how are we doing? We're on plan. We've still got a lot to do in this year, both on the platform and on the brand piece. Seconded senior engineering resources from the UK to Sydney are helping greatly with our efforts, and we're starting to see the benefits of our city activation program. So far so good, but this remains, as I've termed it before, a year of heavy lifting for this business. And actually, in light of all of that, it's good to see they continue to deliver a really solid set of numbers. Okay, if we move to established markets, our headline numbers show order growth of 36%, revenue growth of 60%, and EBITDA margin contracting to 7.5% from 16.4%. Excluding Skip and Benelux we sold last year, orders were up 20%, revenues up 24%, and underlying EBITDA grew 5%. To be clear, we've broken with past practice here by disclosing the effects of an in-market acquisition, as we recognise the materiality of Skip. We won't do that forever as we, over time, integrate the businesses, but it's relevant clearly at this still early stage. Aside from Skip, we saw strong performances in Denmark and Ireland, and better geographical dispersion of orders in France, given the investment that we're making into city activation in that market. Next is our developing markets segment comprising Spain, Italy and Mexico. By some way, Spain and Italy are our largest businesses in this segment, and they continue to perform strongly. I was over in Spain recently. I was struck by two things. I think first, the strength of our local management team, and that's been a common theme on my travels around the group. But secondly, this observation that still only 15% of the delivered food market in Spain is online, 15. So in both of those markets, particularly, there's a long way to go. With that growth potential, frankly, profitability is rightly a secondary consideration, but again, you can see here that the trend is also positive. Let's move to Brazil. We now own 32% of a Latin America joint venture. So here are the full numbers for the business, reflecting the continued very strong performance in Brazil. Indeed, the rate of order growth there exceeds that of just the UK at the equivalent stage of its journey. So with revenue growth of 149%, you'll readily see the desire of the joint venture partners to reinvest a high proportion of profit into growing further the top line of this business. As for entry into Colombia and Argentina, these remain at a very early stage and will report progress to you in due course. Okay, this slide addresses our three remaining group-level KPIs, and they indicate strong trends on both sides of our marketplace. Active users, or customers I should say, rising 19%, and restaurant partners growing 14% net of churn. The 15% growth in average revenue per order reflects several factors. First, currency. So as we note here, it grew 13% on a currency-neutral basis. Second, the impact of Skip, where we charge for the delivery services. And third is the benefit of the 2016 commission increases in several markets, notably the UK and Australia. I move to the cost side of the business. The slide analyzes the global cost base into its three principal constituents and shows that with strong revenue growth, we continue to leverage costs, with each major category falling proportionately. In absolute terms, of course, we continue to invest for growth, and we've already referenced several examples of this. Finally, before I hand over to Adrian, I'm changing tack slightly. We remain a highly cash-generative business. As the slide shows, we converted underlying EBITDA to cash at a rate of 93%, consistent with prior year. So I think if you step back, as you can see, the financial characteristics of our business remain very strong indeed. With which, I'll pass through to Thanks. Thank you, Paul, and good morning, all of you. I said when we spoke back in March, there were 5 big things that we needed to do to be successful in 2017. First, get more momentum back into our UK business. Secondly, continue to develop our international markets. Activate second and third tier cities around the world. Scale up our pilots with branded restaurants. And integrate the businesses that we bought over the last few years. Let me talk to you a bit about what we've done in each of those areas in the last few months. So first up, momentum in the UK. Just to remind you and put this in context, we're talking here about a £6.1 billion delivered food market, about half of which is online at the moment. And as Paul said, we actually saw sequentially higher growth in Q2 than we had in Q1. That was really delivered by a couple of things. The first was superb execution on the part of Graham Caulfield and his team in the UK. So Paul mentioned our engagement with restaurants and all the partnerships that we've done to build that. A great physical manifestation of it is the number of restaurants who actually have branded Just Eat signage on their outlets. So we've got 9,000 restaurants now in the UK with branded signs. And one thing we were particularly pleased about in the first half was the number of restaurants branding their vehicles and their drivers with Just Eat. So we estimate 1 out of every 5 orders in the UK is now delivered in a branded Just Eat vehicle, and that's up from virtually 0 a year ago. So superb execution on both sales and marketing. Second, we've really seen the brand develop and evolve in the way that we had hoped when we relaunched it in the back end of last year. And a couple of examples of what's happened there. One is we've got household name brands like EE, Coke, and Amazon now featuring us in their marketing activity. The image you see there is a Just Eat bike branded in a EE ad. And the result of this is we're not only seeing more customers, but they're ordering more frequently. And you can see our frequency numbers there for the first half of each of the last 2 years. So we've got more customers ordering more frequently than ever before. Paul also mentioned the momentum that we're seeing in top placements around the world, and the UK is no exception to that. We've seen great momentum in our top placement business, which has grown faster than underlying orders, and there's still so much more that we can do there in the ancillary revenue area. Next up, our international business. So Paul mentioned the outstanding growth that we've seen in Spain and Italy, the potential of those markets. He mentioned the outstanding performance of Brazil and the above expectation growth that we've delivered in Skip the Dishes. But there's actually more. I wanted to talk about a couple of our smaller markets, which are also developing into stars of the portfolio. So first up, Denmark. Our team in Denmark, led by Carsten Bolt, is in the process of delivering its 16th consecutive year of double-digit revenue growth, which is an outstanding track record in a market that continues to be very profitable. I remember saying to Amanda, our country manager in Ireland, when she began, that we wanted to turn Ireland into another Denmark. With a slightly smaller population, we thought it would be great if it could one day get to Danish scale. And I'm delighted to let you know that in the first half of 2017, we processed more orders in Ireland than in all of Denmark and Norway combined. And that business in Ireland continues to grow by more than 30% year on year. You can see here an image of the Dublin Bikes, which was a sponsorship deal we announced just a few days ago. And this shows how we've evolved really from a startup a few years ago to a household name brand in Ireland. We took over from Coke as the headline sponsor until 2020. And I hope you agree with me that those bikes look fantastic, and I hope you'll use them in Dublin over the next few years. Moving on to second-tier city activation. Why do we care about this? Well, our biggest competitor everywhere remains the telephone. And there are millions of people who still order takeaway on the phone who live in small to medium-sized cities around the world. What we often find when we buy businesses is that they've been less aggressive in this regard than we would have been. So they've generally stuck with the bigger cities and not gone so far into the hinterland as Just Eat would have done. And that's why it's a particular issue in Australia and France, which are obviously businesses that we've bought over the last few years. So in the course of this year, we're in the process of launching a comprehensive city activation campaign in both of these markets. We've rapidly scaled our restaurant base in small and medium-sized cities, and we've activated and branded up those restaurants in those cities on a scale that we've never done before in these markets. And as a result, we're seeing significant growth in outlying areas of both France and Australia. Next, we said that we would scale up the pilots that we're doing with branded restaurants. If you just think about Just Eat for a second and what we really are, we're effectively the largest tool for restaurant discovery in all of the markets where we operate. So it's no surprise that a lot of the biggest branded restaurant groups around the world want to be part of that marketplace and want to be visible when people are deciding what to eat. We've been working over the last few months with several of these leading groups, and we're learning a lot. We're learning that, Paul mentioned that we aim to grow our customer base via these partnerships. We aim to drive greater frequency into our core business, and of course these partnerships need to work for both sides, so they need to work for the brands as well. And what we're finding is that in some cases all of those assumptions are playing out, and in others less so. And we expect to learn a lot more over the coming months about as we continue these pilots, about what works as we scale up Next, integrating the businesses that we've bought over the last few years. So it's worth reminding you probably that the businesses that we bought off Rocket Internet in 2016 in Spain, Italy, Brazil and Mexico have been fully integrated. So those platforms no longer exist and they're fully part of Just Eat. We're preparing to consolidate our Australian platform into the Just Eat platform as well. And that work is well underway. There's a team in Sydney and London fully engaged in that as we speak. We expect Switzerland and France to follow in due course. And I was very impressed in Winnipeg recently by the delivery system that our Skip team have developed. And we are looking to incorporate elements of that into the Just Eat platform as well. So overall, strong progress in the 5 areas I mentioned, but we're going to continue to be busy with all of them in the second half. And with that, I'll hand back to Paul.
Thanks, Adrian. So look, in summary, building on Adrian's points there, this slide sets out our focus for the balance of this year. Clearly, we're going to retain a laser focus on the UK, building on that momentum we talked about in the first half. We're going to continue to drive our international businesses with a particular focus on our Australian agenda. And as Adrian's just outlined, we'll continue to diversify our national order bases via city activation. We'll develop these early stage relationships with restaurant partners, these early pilots, and we'll continue to share the best learnings we can from acquired businesses. So we turn now to guidance. As I hope we've made clear, we're in a strong position both operationally and financially. Revenues for the first half supported by the outperformance of our acquired businesses, notably Skip the Dishes in Canada, were ahead of our original expectations. Reflecting this more positive outlook for the group, we're raising our revenue guidance for full year 17 to between 500 and 515 million of revenue, up from 480 to 495 million. And in line with our strategy, and hopefully as we explained, we intend to reinvest this revenue outperformance back into the business, including further building on the momentum we see in Skip the Dishes and the increased collaboration with certain selected branded restaurants, notably in the UK. Notwithstanding this investment, and due to the strength of the underlying business, we reiterate today our previous guidance for full year 2017 EBITDA of between 157 million and 163 million pounds. So look, with that, we'll move to your questions. We'll start certainly in the room, and if we have time, we'll go to the people that are dialed in. But perhaps you kindly, when you get the microphone, say your name and your institution. Thank you.
It's Mark from JP Morgan. 2 questions really. One is on the investment. Just tell us a little bit more about the key areas. You also highlighted the different areas. So clearly, Canada, very strong top-line performance, but you feel now is the right time to increase the investment in there. So why is that? And similar to the UK, why do we see also now this increased spending here? And the second question is on Australia. Just how do you see, probably the next 6 months, the next 12 months, that business can we expect maybe an uptick in orders maybe in the second half or early next year?
Well, sure. Marcus, let me kick off with that, and I'm sure Adrian may have some comments of his own. But I think let's talk firstly to the investments. With Skip, we're seeing, as I mentioned, an outperformance in terms of our expectations. You know, we expected revenues Canadian dollar rising in the order of 40 million. We're getting 26, at the first half, and we're seeing Skip launch successfully into new cities. In the initial phase of that investment, that is a loss-making activity and therefore takes the form of investment. What I will say to you is, though, when you look at the cities where Skip has been for some time, I'm thinking about Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, they're making actually some
good profits in those cities. So we're convinced that this is a strategy that we should be supporting and doubling down on. And that forms part of our investment. If you think about the dining chains, I think it's fair to say there are offensive and defensive reasons for doing this. Offensive because our hypothesis is that this will bring new customers to our platform, but also that those customers will place new orders and become new customers, if you like, for our independent restaurants, so they win as well. Now that's a hypothesis, and testing needs to prove out whether that works. Do both constituents win? That's important. But at the same time, with some of those chains, not all of those chains, we are playing a part in the procurement of the delivery service. To be clear, we don't have delivery drivers, but we are working with third-party courier companies to provide delivery. And in the early stages, that brings investment with it as well. So we'll report back on that in due time. But there is a defensive aspect to this as well, to be clear. You know, we face, and have always faced, very strong competition, but that competition is dynamic. The names change over time. And, you know, I rarely would I name check a competitor, but, you know, we've seen Uber come into this market, and you've all seen the relationship they're building with McDonald's. We want to be absolutely sure, as best we can, that our customers have nowhere else that they need to go to order their food other than the Just Eat platform. So it is important that we work with selected chains in a thoughtful and careful manner to explore whether those hypotheses I mentioned prove to be true. I think in Australia, before I pass to Adrian for any comments he's got, I think we should be a little cautious, because I think, as I said to you, it's a year of heavy lifting. I'm not, myself, expecting a big uptick in order growth in the next 6 months. We'd be delighted if at the end of this process we saw the Australian business on the Just Eat platform with better city activation, a broader spread of order base. Adrian might comment on that in a moment, and with consolidation around the Menulog brand. But it does make me, that is a big agenda. And I just express, once again, I reiterate my caution around 2017. Happy with how they're getting on with it, but there's a lot to do.
I think I was talking about which was not designed to operate at the sort of scale that we intend to take it to. And so the first things first, you know, we need to address that. We need to get it right, and then you know, growth will follow. But also, I think the exciting thing about this platform consolidation is the greater velocity it will enable our technology teams to deliver more broadly. Because, you know, at the moment our technology efforts are diversified between several different platforms. And obviously, as we consolidate in the way that I mentioned, first Australia, subsequently France and Switzerland, all of that effort will then be focused on the core, which is quite exciting. And then, you know, I should mention as well city activation. You know, the potential in cities where Menulog just historically was very, very small. You know, I think in places like Perth, Adelaide, the potential there is very interesting to us. And we're still, you know, relatively early in that process of intensively activating these cities.
Hi, Jess. It's Joe Bartlett from Credit Suisse. A couple of follow-ups along the same themes, really. In established markets, even excluding the skip, we saw profit growth significantly slower than revenue. Is that just a Canadian investment, or are there initiatives in other established markets you can point to? And secondly, when we're looking on the branded restaurant stuff, and you're citing lots of investment, should we assume that these relationships are in fact loss-making, at least in the first instance, or just margin diluting? And Adrian touched on that some of them are working, some might not be working. If they continue to lose money, is it something that you need to do from a defensive standpoint, or something that you will look to alter if you continue to lose money?
Okay. Established market segment. 6 of our markets benefited from the rebranding of Just Eat during this period. 4 of them were in the established segment. So there's clearly costs associated with those rebrands. And then I think, as Adrian referred to, city activation program in France, for example, which where the results are good, sees us spending, frankly, nearly half of our revenues in this period on marketing. So that is the right investment, you know, to make to drive a broader order base in France, but it is also a reason why in the short term you're quite right to point to the EBITDA slowdown ex-skip.
And just on your point about the defensive and loss-making, potentially, chain relationships, the nice thing is that the deals that are most attractive to our customers, which is what we're really interested in, the working with partners that our customers want to order from, that also improves the economics. So it's low volume partnerships which will tend to have worse economics than high volume ones, and obviously if it's low volume, it's not doing a very good job defensively anyway. So those two factors actually support one another.
Your question, which clearly goes beyond 17, doesn't it, into sort of, well, what does the future look like here? And I think we're just saying that these are early and carefully crafted pilots with select restaurants. We're already learning that some of those branded chains are resonating on the platform, but some are not. And we're going to fine-tune that over the coming months. And when we've concluded that, we'll give you a fuller update. So, you're always going to find me saying at this sort of half-year stage that I'm not going to talk really a great deal about the following full year. But I think particularly with regard to this initiative, we need a few more months at least under our belt.
Morning.
Morning.
This is Julia from Deutsche Bank. Just two questions from me. First, on developing markets, the EBITDA loss improved significantly. Just wondering if you confirm break-even for Spain is expected in the second half of this year, and then Italy will follow in 2018 or maybe earlier. And will the margin improvement coming from developing markets be enough to offset the slowdown in the UK margin, so that at the group level you'll still deliver about 300 basis points improvement?
We will continue, as the slide indicated, to see margin improvement in developing markets. And yes, it remains our view that Spain will move into profitability this year, and Italy most probably the year after. Frankly, the challenge internally to that has always been, let's not forget to explore the possibility of doubling down on the investment. That's very much what we're doing in Brazil. But nonetheless, that is our intended trajectory. So margin improvement is intended to continue in the developing segment. In overall terms on margin, you've seen a sequential improvement in UK margins, H2 16 over in H1 17 compared to H2 16, and for the full year for 2017, we still expect a modest improvement in UK margins year over year. So to be very clear, these investments that we're placing in so far as they pertain to the UK have been funded by the momentum that we see in the UK.
Hi, Richard Stevens from Numis. Two questions, please. First, now you've had a few months with Skip the Dishes and you've seen their food delivery processes. You alluded that you may sort of look at other markets possibly where you could use that. I don't know if you give any more colour on the food delivery aspect. And the second question is on if there's any sort of colour you can give on the pressures which your restaurant partners are facing, given the food cost inflation and labour cost inflation. Are you seeing the increased churn in your restaurant partners? Thank you.
Yeah, so I can help a bit with both of those. So on Skip the Dishes, it's worth remembering that we've always followed a mixed model with regard to delivery. So we've had our own delivery business in Denmark for a long time. We work with partners across most of our markets. And the learnings from Skip the Dishes are applicable to both partners and ourselves in Denmark, where we do it ourselves. So as I said, we plan to incorporate elements of that into our technology and processes, given how effective they're proving to be in Canada. Second thing you mentioned was churn and economic pressure on our restaurants. So a short answer on churn is no. In percentage terms, in the UK, for example, we've seen slightly fewer restaurants churning than we did in the equivalent period last year. And of course, we're continuing to sign up many new ones and grow our restaurant base overall. But I think that really speaks to what Paul said about these restaurant services that we're providing, because we see our role very clearly as being a champion of the independent restaurant sector. You're all going to get, I think, on the way out, the takeaway economy report, which talks about the impact of the takeaway sector on the UK overall, and some of what Just Eat is doing to drive that, like setting up the British Takeaway campaign. So these things are all part of what we want to do to help restaurants grow both top line and bottom line.
Hello, John. No, we'll do Andrea after John.
Thanks. It's John King at Point. First one actually was just maybe around the pilots in the UK. Just a clarification, really. If you're not doing the logistics, what are the kinds of things that are kind of cost you're incurring? Just trying to understand how recurring versus one-off basically those are in nature. The second one was, I think over the last 12 months you've had a really nice increase in the blended commission rate. I know there's a bit of impact from skipping that, but even excluding that, it feels like, obviously UK has gone up. Just maybe talk about generally, is that something you think can continue at least at the same rate? Does that slow down at all, or how do you see that? And then Adrian, you spoke to the order increase per customer, which I think is a pretty nice stat to show that going through still in the UK. I guess, where's that coming from? Are they ordering from some of the restaurants that you're adding, perhaps some of those that you're bringing on with these partnerships, or just give us a little bit of a feel as to how you're managing to do that? Thanks.
Thanks, John. We'll double up on the answer to that. I think the firstly, on commission rates, I think your question was how will they trend? I mean, to be very clear, we have no plans to increase commission rates in any of our markets. But of course, as restaurants churn, new restaurants come in, they come in typically at the 14% mark. That's the pricing established back in 2016. So that will continue to tick upwards. We're at 13.1% as a group average at the moment. I think on the partnership with the chains, there's an element of marketing cost, really, of co-marketing activity that pertains to it. But in some instances, in certain of these pilots, but not all, there's the question of sharing in the early economics of the delivery equation with the third-party delivery company. So working out the sort of share of the economics of that, recognizing that it's with increased driver efficiency measured in drops per hour that eventually those economics improve. But in the early days, without that kind of those polygons, if you like, then there's loss making that attaches to the delivery relationship.
Yeah. And your question about frequency and what's driving that. So with our business, there is no silver bullet. It's hundreds of little things that go into making us so successful. I mentioned some of those things as I was presenting, like the proportion of our orders that are now being delivered in branded vehicles, which is something we're very proud of. I could speak to the platform reliability, as you say, the greater diversity of restaurants on the platform. I spoke a bit about our brand and how it's evolved. That's actually leading people to order a more diverse range of cuisine. So we saw desserts and chicken as some of our fastest growing cuisine types, not the core staples of pizza, Chinese, Indian. So we've seen all kinds of factors, and I think when you take the whole package together, it's that's making our product better and getting people to use it more often. Andrea.
Thank you. 3 questions from me, please. The first one, if I can sort of dive in a little bit more in Australia. My understanding is the order growth fell to close to 12% in the second quarter, and if you've been doing well on the expansion, then what is driving actually the sort of very low growth in your core cities? And related to that, what are the specific changes in the platform that you think make people order more frequently, or you might be able to sort of add new customers? And then the second question, and I'll keep it to 2 since I'm expanding a little bit more. It was recently mentioned that the government is going to try to limit the credit card such as yours. I understand that right now you're taking 50p from the restaurant, and most of them are just charging that back to the consumer. If they're no longer able to do that, how are you going to sort of offset that impact? Thank you.
So your first point, Andrew, about Australia, the thing above all that I think has been holding us back is operating on a legacy platform. And I've been very clear that that's something we're working on right now. That's getting that piece of work done will improve reliability. It will also improve the underlying consumer feature set. So if I think about the mobile app, for example, significant improvements once that's flipped onto the Just Eat stack. Plus, it's worth remembering the city activation work that I'm talking about is still relatively in its infancy. I mean, we've been very pleased so far by how it's gone. But remember how long we've been operating in some of these markets, like the UK, Denmark. I mentioned 10 years of consecutive double-digit revenue growth. This is a long game. This isn't something where you work on city activation for 6 months and then you can tick it off the list. It's something we need to continue to do, and the momentum will build as we do it.
Certainly, Andrea, the advantage of being a two-sided marketplace where the restaurants do delivery is our ability to achieve national scale. So you look at sort of cities like Newcastle, New South Wales, a coal mining community, classic Just Eat demographic, activating those cities, recognising that the central postcodes of cities like Sydney and Melbourne, as indeed is the case, Toronto, Paris, are going to be very competitive. That's where naturally the three-sided players can play. So we should play to our strengths, and that includes this national diversification of our order base. But you refer to the Payment Services Directive 2 in your second question there, which, as you rightly say, applies to credit card fees. This has been, we've known about this since indeed 2015 and have been working on it, as you say, not because it very directly affects us in the sense of our charge to restaurants isn't caught by, if you like, this legislation, but their practice quite often, most often, of passing that charge on is potentially, and we're working with them to help them reposition their services as a means of compensating for that potentially lost revenue to them. We're doing some A/B testing in 4 cities actually in the UK at the moment, working on different services that they could provide their customers that would ensure that they comply with the Payment Services Directive. I'm not going to say much more about those tests at the moment, but I think the critical thing is actually in your question. Our fee to the restaurants remains intact, and the value that we deliver in respect of that fee is very clear to our restaurant partners.
Rob Joyce, Goldman Sachs. Couple from me. Firstly, just on Skip the Dishes, are you able to say what you expect the losses to be in 2017 and what you kind of originally budgeted for? And the second one is just on the branded chains. So completely recognising it's pretty early stages, but is there a scenario you can envisage where this isn't a headwind to the sort of long-term margin expectations in the UK that is embedded in expectations?
I think, Rob, to that second question, that would certainly be a premature conclusion. I'd go back to it. We've got some very clear success hypotheses that we'll revisit with the benefit of a bit of time. We're doing this in a very controlled fashion. There are more restaurant chains that are coming to us who want to work with us than we want to work with. So, we're saying no to chains that we don't think resonate in our platform. So it would definitely be premature, and of course we're mindful of the impact on the broader business. I mean, to be clear, if we step back from this part of our business is still going to represent less than 10% of our business in any scenario we can see. So we should keep a context, I think, around it. Look, as to Skip, I think we said on the original 40 million Canadian dollar prognosis for the top line, we'd expect to lose about $7 million. I'm not going to be too precise, but you can expect that number to be north of $10 million with the success and momentum we've seen.
Thanks very much.
Hi, it's Kieran Donnelly from Liberum. 3 questions from myself. Just going back to the branded chains, I know it's early stages again, but could you just give the detail or some general comments on ARPO differential between the branded and independent orders in the UK. Secondly, on the city activation, could you just give us some idea of data points you look at for entering into new cities and how far down the scale you'd be willing to go? And thirdly, Peter talked about using the platform to gain data to drive customer insights. Do you think the platform is where it needs to be to get that data? And if so, is there investment needed in the platform to upgrade it?
Again, we'll double up on this, but I think on that third theme, investment is ongoing in the platform to do that. You know, one thing we observe, let's take the UK market. We've got uniquely 11 years of deep domain knowledge that goes to how you run a restaurant, more effectively in the UK, and we can bring that knowledge, that insight to bear, and are increasingly doing so for the benefit of our restaurants. A small example, and very brief for you, I was in Ireland not long ago, and one of the small local chains in Dublin, who had 4 outlets, came to us to tell us that they were opening a 5th outlet in a particular postcode. Our response was, why don't you let us, run the data? And their response, frankly, was, well, run the data, but we're doing it. We went back, and of course, we analysed where the orders were coming from, by street, by very detailed sort of analysis. And as a result of that, persuaded them that actually, if you open your restaurant where you intend, you will cannibalise 2 of your other outlets. But if you open it in a different area, you'll prosper. And they changed their minds. So, there's an example of the difference we can make with that very deep domain knowledge. And increasingly, through AutoPad, through our territory managers engagement, we're bringing that to bear. But Peter's absolutely right. There's much more we can do there, I think. On the ARPO differential, again, Adrian may comment here, but my point about being very selective with chains, there is no point to go to the extreme in Just Eat, putting a Michelin-starred restaurant on its platform. That isn't where our existing 9+ million customers, for example, in the UK, transact. So you can imagine, therefore, that the ARPO, or the average order value, is going to be sort of broadly similar to the core. And I think city activation data points, what should
let me tell you a bit about city activation and how we think about it. So I think about it in terms of 3 Cs, coverage, conversion, and customers. So to what extent do we have all of the restaurants we want to have in a city? As we add restaurants, the conversion rate of our platform improves. So that's a key metric at a city level. And how many customers are there who are ordering takeaway in that city, and how many of them have we got? And you mentioned data and the platform. We're using data more and more to get more sophisticated about how we do city activation. So if I think of how we source restaurant leads, how we score restaurant leads to decide who are the most important ones to sign, these are areas which have come on enormously in the last few years, and we're continuing to learn. We one of the nice things about Just Eat is we're quite humble. We've got very open minds. We always want to learn from others, and every time we buy a business, we look at what do they do better than us. It's not just a one-way transfer of knowledge. And as we've got to know Skip the Dishes, iFood, for example, we've learned more and more and more about how to do these things. So lots to do still.
Clearly, as the final comment on that average revenue per order point, to the extent that we're participating in delivery, of course, the average revenue to us per order will go up compared to the restaurant stuff. Any further questions?
Hi, morning. It's James Locke here at Peel Hunt. 2 questions for me, please. So currently you've got 1,900 restaurants that are making savings with your group offers. Can you talk about how that's going? What are the most popular and which ones drive the most savings? Obviously, the 1,900, there's a lot of upside there still to go. Are there any barriers to the restaurants, trying to make those savings? Is it awareness or inability to take them? And secondly, mobile orders are now at 75% or 83% in the UK. Can you split that out between mobile web and mobile app, and how that split and economics have changed as you've put updates through and whether part of that increase in average order value is a mix shift to mobile. Thanks.
Okay. I think I'll kick off on the restaurant services. You know, which ones are resonating? Well, a number of these are quite new, James. The one that's been in place the longest, was put in place in June 16. June 16 was the Booker deal, and it's that deal to which most of the savings have been achieved at the minute, applying as it does to the major cost of sales line for our restaurants. Are there any impediments to more restaurants, you know, taking up the service? No, they're not. Frankly, what we are developing is a body of case studies with which to showcase the benefits of the services to our restaurant partners. So really pleased with this kind of early take-up and a lot more to do. Mobile?
Yeah, so I believe the app percentage is 46, so that's out of the 75 that you mentioned going via the app. And just one thing to add on restaurant services is we've been quite thoughtful about what are the most important parts of the restaurant's P&L to address, and obviously a huge part of their cost is food. So the deal that we've done with Booker is absolutely central to those partnerships, and that's something we're looking to replicate in some of our other more mature markets.
Okay, I think looks like there are no further hands up. Just to wrap up, thank you very much for coming today. It's a busy day, I know, for many of you. Thank you very much for your questions, and we'll be available at the front for any more over the coming minutes. Thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Just Eat H1 results presentation. You may now disconnect and have a lovely rest of your day.